delegation doing a number of deals and building greater relationships and joint ventures, which was fantastic. Today is a day really for me to continue to develop and deepen the political relationship. And this morning already I've had a number of really energising and exciting meetings with a number of ministers and a group of MPs talking about the New Zealand-Japan relationship, and of course tonight with the state dinner, but also with the bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Kishida, who will be just back in Japan from the G7. It's a great opportunity to talk about global regional issues and obviously how we continue to advance our bilateral relationship. With that, happy to take your questions.
With your speech at the NZ Town, with your meeting with Kishida, how much will regional security play into that and strengthening ties, and what are we looking to walk away from with this trip?
Look, I mean, what we really want to do is deepen our security and defence ties with Japan. We think that's important. We will also talk about our economic interests as well, as we have been doing. You saw some of that yesterday. We talked about the fact that we want to increase our engagement with our naval and our air assets with respect to enforcing the UN sanctions against North Korea. You will have seen it today, pretty tough neighbourhood when you're in Japan. You've got flashpoints potentially with Russia, with China, with North Korea, and again, having come back from a G7, I'm looking forward to getting into those issues with them.
When you say sorry, just on the...
Sorry, I'll go to Mikey. Sorry, I'll just go to Mikey.
Sorry, just discussed with the Defence Minister last night.
Look, it was just a chance to us to talk about how he sees the region and how they look at the threats. Like, again, when you're living in Japan and you're leading from Japan, as I said, it's a tough neighbourhood, and you've got a series of potential flashpoints that at any point in time that you're managing and thinking very deeply about. So it was a chance just to build again that relationship with another key minister. I'm meeting with several ministers across their government, as I've done this morning, and we'll continue to do through the course of the day.
Are you not worried that you're saying things like it's a tough neighbourhood, there's flashpoints, you specifically referenced China. Are you not worried that you're upsetting them by this sort of rhetoric?
Oh, no, we talk very openly about the threats when you live in this part of the world. That is the reality of our conversations that we've been having. The threats are a series of touch points. If you've got North Korea building nuclear capacity and also sending intercontinental ballistic missiles and testing those, that is a major threat coming through Japanese airspace. Well, I said there's a number of places. You're seeing at this part of the region in Northeast Asia, the connection of issues that are happening in Europe, Russia, Ukraine, Russia, North Korea, happening in this part of the world.
Sorry, just further to Jason's question, the United Nations Secretary General has urged countries to sort of call out China for backing Russia's war in Ukraine, and Japan here is considering sanctions against Chinese firms which are aiding that effort. Is New Zealand readying sanctions against China, or is that something we would consider?
It's not something that we've discussed yet, but having said that, that is an issue that I raised with the Chinese Premier last week in our bilateral with him as well. About our concerns about making sure that that we did not want to see supply of Russia with mixed use weaponry or anything like that. Technologies.
What are we doing in terms of our monitoring or surveillance of what China is providing Russia?
Again, we are part of a multilateral group here. Our focus in this part of the world has really been around North Korea, where the UN has really defined sanctions very strongly, and it's making sure that we are doing our part to enforce those sanctions. That's what I stepped up and talked about yesterday.
Sure, but we're doing our part in terms of monitoring and enforcing sanctions on North Korea. What about the sanctions in China?
Again, what I've raised with China is our concerns about making sure that we wouldn't want to see China providing Russia with any support that ends up, fueling the war, continue to fuel their efforts in Ukraine, and that's what I've talked about with China.
Have you thought any more about your C-lister tag-along comments?
No, we've got a great delegation here. As you know, it's 3 times bigger than anyone that came to Japan before. We've got a lot of senior leaders here, and as you're seeing, they're pumping out some great deals and some great arrangements.
Has any of your business delegation raised it with you?
No, not at all.
When you did make the comments, who were you referring to when you said C-listers?
Again, all I was explaining was just to say that I'm really excited the fact that when we come on delegations, we're curating and bringing a business delegation that can do business in the markets that we're going to. And again, when you look here, we've brought almost 30 chairs and CEOs here. The last group we brought was 11. We've got senior folk here that have actually done a great job of actually closing out some big and significant deals. You saw some of that yesterday with Peter Beck, you've seen some of that with Fabrum already, and a number of others as well. So I'm really proud of this group, and this is the way I want to go into these markets, is actually we go as New Zealand Inc., we hit it with overwhelming force, and we bring the right people that can actually do the business, and that's what's getting done.
You mentioned
that you had a meeting with Morrison and also some big investors. Are you confident that you might be able to land a deal like nzherald did with BlackRock, which has attracted $2 billion of investment to New Zealand?
Look, I think there's huge opportunity. I think you're on the right track because we have a massive infrastructure deficit in New Zealand, and there is huge amounts of sovereign wealth money, pension money floating around. It was an incredible meeting. There was 5 bankers in the room, and there was in excess, as Paul from Morrison and I talked about, in excess of $2 trillion worth of funds being invested by those banks. What we were doing and what I was making the pitch for was actually New Zealand as an investable place with respect to making them understand that there was real opportunities in particularly the area of renewables, particularly in the area of infrastructure investment, and they were very open to that.
So I appreciate you sort of laying the groundwork for that, which is important, of course, but when might we see an announcement, some deals come to fruition from that?
Well, again, those banks will invest in private companies, as they may well do, but they also can, I'm making it very open that I want to seek investment in public infrastructure as well. That'll be up to them to work through as infrastructure projects and deals come to fore.
Can you convert a deal like a $2 billion BlackRock investment?
All I say is my job is to make sure that New Zealand, with those big banks and understanding what they need as they look at 195 countries around the world to invest, it's making sure that we get share of mind and that they understand that there are opportunities in New Zealand and that we are welcoming of foreign capital. New Zealand, as you well know, within the OECD, competes as as the worst place to welcome foreign direct investment to a country. We often fight it out with Mexico on that list. So the reality is that's a huge opportunity. When there is so much money awash in the world, I want to attract that money to New Zealand so that we can build the infrastructure, so we can advance people's lives. Again, they appreciate the fact that we are making it easier for projects to get done because we are considered to be quite bureaucratic and slow. They appreciate the fact that we're open to new funding and financing tools, and ultimately, we're going to be a place that's welcoming of capital. So that's about us just being. A lot of it is making sure that we are share of mind. When you are a small country in a world of 195 others and 8 billion people, your job as Prime Minister is to make sure that New Zealand is at the top of their mind and that they are thinking about it when they've got lots of other opportunities to consider.
Prime Minister, did you advocate for the media to be free to ask questions when Premier Lee visited last week? Look,
the protocols are well established in the sense of if you think about me in Southeast Asia, there is in Thailand or in the Philippines, or as you'll see here again today, they do press conferences differently. There's a different protocol in place where there is a statements made.
Appreciate that, but he's coming into New Zealand, which is a democracy with a free press. Shouldn't that be the rules?
Well, again, you would have seen Anthony Albanese follow exactly the same protocol that we had as well yesterday or the day before. And what I try and do is it's important for me to have as much access to you and you to have as much access to me as possible. I made myself available through these meetings where I can, as frequently as I possibly can, and I think we're really proud of the fact that we are very accessible to the journalists in New Zealand and the media, and that's important. It's an important part of our democracy. But we also have to respect, as hosts of countries coming into New Zealand and or when we're offshore, that there are different protocols. That doesn't preclude me from making myself available to you to ask me anything you wish.
Anthony Albanese actually intervened when a reporter was being obstructed from doing their job by the Chinese officials and spoke publicly about the need for reporters to be able to go about their job unimpeded. In New Zealand, we had a very different reaction. One reporter was actually shoved by a New Zealand official after your stand-up, and I was actually physically grabbed by a New Zealand official as well while asking a question. Is that appropriate? Are you comfortable with
I'm
that?
completely unaware of that, and I'd ask you to make a formal complaint about that if that's the case. Again, the protocol that we've used with the Chinese Premier last week is exactly the same protocol that Anthony Albanese has used in China with his Chinese Premier this week. So I'm not aware of that story. I'm very happy to.
Did we just concede to all of China's terms when they visited us?
No, not at all. There is a protocol about when we are being good hosts to visitors to our country, and likewise when I come to other countries, as you will have observed here, the hospitality that's extended to us here. And so we need to work together on those. As I said, it's very common, particularly in Asian protocol, that actually the media engagement is done as it has been in Thailand, as it has been in the Philippines, as it is going to be here today. You're going to see the same thing here in Japan today, as you've seen in Australia and you've seen in New Zealand when they visit us as well.
But though, do you and do your officials push back on those protocols and say we are a democracy with a free press? Our media need to be asking questions. Do you put that?
There is an awful lot of work, as you can well imagine, when we come to a country and when we are hosting a country in New Zealand. There's a lot of work from officials about how the program will be, and we work incredibly hard to advocate very strongly to create as many media opportunities for you as we possibly can, and that is important.
Handling journalists and shouting at them when they do their job.
Well, as I said, I'm unaware of the situation that has been raised just now.
It's just been put to you though, so what's your response to that?
Well, again, I would ask for if there's any complaint that it's formally raised, that it can be formally investigated, and there's a formal response to
You know
it.
about it now, what's your reaction to it?
Sorry?
Is that appropriate? You know about it now, what's your reaction to it? Is it appropriate for journalists to
Well,
be
again, I don't know.
by a member of a department and, told no while doing their job?
Yeah, so just in fairness, the issue has just been raised with me now. I was completely unaware of the issue. And so what I'm saying to you is that that it doesn't sound acceptable, and therefore raise the issue formally so that we can respond to that. But what I'd say to you is we work incredibly hard to make sure that there is as many moments as possible while we are working with partners who have quite different protocols and approaches. And we make as many opportunities as we can for the media to actually engage in these events. We bring you along on these events for a reason, because we want you to be able to engage with us appropriately and completely. But when we are, as I said, there are different protocols, and we have to respect that as well.
You're saying though that we follow other people's rules and we're in their country, so why wouldn't they follow our rules when we're in our
Well, we
country?
have engagements. There's Anthony Albanese has just gone through the same thing in Australia, right? It's exactly the same process. A press statement's followed by.
His reaction
was very
has been
different.
very different to yours.
I'd just say to you, I don't think it has been actually. I don't think it has been. 2 press statements followed by him giving an individual press stand up and taking questions, right?
But
Same
his
model.
reaction to stopping journalists doing their job, he was very forthright saying they shouldn't be stopped doing
That
their
is
job.
right.
An official
We
from
believe
your
very
office
strongly. We
described
believe.
it as a stunt. I mean, did you think
I'm
it
not.
was a stunt?
Well, I'm just saying to you, I'm unaware of your complaint. Could I ask you please to raise that officially and formally so that it can be investigated so we can respond? Because it sounds very concerning. But until that actually happens, I don't know the situation. I don't know anything about that situation. I'm completely unaware of it until you've actually raised it now.
What additional information do you need with the situation? I believe you were there. Bridie asked the question. She was told to stop. What more do you need to know to form
Well, I don't know about.
But what more do you need to know, to form a view?
Well, I would want to understand what actually happened, right, and what are the facts of that situation, because then we can do something about that. I'm just hearing about it for the very first time, which I appreciate. It sounds unacceptable, but the issue is a formal complaint should be raised so that we can investigate the
Just going
issue.
back to your comments around the C list, are you still standing by the fact that you were taken out of context with that one?
All I just say to you is we've got a great delegation.
No, I
We're getting the
didn't say
business
that. Are you
done,
still
and I'm really
standing
proud
Are
about
you
it.
still standing by the fact that you were taken out of context?
All I'm saying to you is I think it's important when we come to these markets. That's what I was.
I'm just trying to figure out. You said those words. Are you standing by those words as you said them to me?
Well, I could have expressed it in a different or better way, but what I'm saying to you very clearly is that when we come to these delegations, I am putting huge effort into it to make sure that I've got the business delegation right, we've got the media delegation right, and we've actually got the political delegation and the political engagement right. I'm really proud of actually what we delivered in Southeast Asia on that trip. I'm very proud of what we've delivered in this engagement with Japan, which is an important relationship. And so when I look at this delegation that we have been able to form, we have New Zealand's leading chairs and CEOs here. We have a huge number of them, the biggest number that we've ever brought to Japan before, and we actually are getting the business done exactly as I wanted us to be able to do.
Okay, last
on
question,
sanctions,
please.
Just on sanctions against China. So do you know whether there has been any work done anywhere in the New Zealand government to look at what sanctioning China or Chinese firms could look like?
Not that I'm aware of. What I have done is I raised the issue proactively with Premier Lee in my bilateral to say that we would be extremely concerned if there was intelligence or advice that actually China was providing Russia with support that was fueling the war in Ukraine.
Thanks very much.
Sorry, Michael.
Sorry, but are we going to back up? So are we going to back up those words with action if they don't stop?
Well, as I said to you, I raise my differences with the Chinese or with any partner for that matter, consistently, predictably, in private or in public. That's exactly what we did on that issue.
I just have a question for a colleague, please. Your thoughts on the New Zealand economy? It's looking pretty pessimistic out there. The RBNZ is talking about it being difficult to bring down inflation.
Yeah, look, I mean, no doubt about it. It's been a very difficult time in New Zealand, and this is what happens when you lose good economic management, frankly, and we now have the hangover of all of that bad management. The reality is we are working incredibly hard as a government to rebuild the economy. We want to lower inflation, so we lower the cost of living for New Zealanders. We've started that process, as we've seen, with good, disciplined government spending, which is our responsibility to help contribute to that lowering of inflation. When we lower inflation, then we lower interest rates. We lower interest rates, we grow the economy. We grow the economy, we keep people in work. It's as simple as that. So everything, as you saw in our budget, was designed around making sure that we have efficient government spending that's actually delivering outcomes and results. We wanted to deliver tax relief to lower middle income New Zealanders. It doesn't solve all the problems, but it helps and it's important. And then we need to make sure that all of our efforts are actually getting inflation back under 3% by the end of the year, as where we think the forecasts are heading to. That would be great. It's for the first time in a long time within the band, and from there we would expect to see interest rates fall. Then we would expect the economy to start to grow. But we are doing everything we can to make sure that we have, we are fighting the root cause of this problem, which is inflation. And when we deal with that, that's how we'll get economic growth in place. Then the bigger question is, we have a fantastic future in New Zealand, and you've only got to spend time up here in Japan or in Southeast Asia to get very energised and very optimistic about the opportunities for our country, and that's why we're here doing this business.
Thanks
very much.
Just to clarify your position. So the incident was called a stunt by an official in your office, and I was told I'd be kicked out of future events. Is that an appropriate reaction?
Again, I'm unaware of those conversations, and so what I'd say to you is we want to have as much engagement with the press in New Zealand as we possibly can. I think we make ourselves incredibly available, highly accessible to you. I think it's very important in our democracy to do that. I don't know the situation, I'm unaware of that situation, but I'm very happy to look into it. I'm very happy for you to raise it formally, but I'd just say to you is we are great advocates of making sure we make ourselves as available as possible to you as frequently as possible each and every day so that you have those opportunities.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.